Okay, let's look at these guys. On a parallelogram, just say yes or no. Are all sides congruent? No. Both pairs of opposite sides are congruent? Yes. So just say yes or no. Both pairs of opposite sides are parallel? Both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. So opposite angles, both pairs of opposite angles, would those be congruent? Yes. Okay. Exactly one pair of opposite sides are parallel? No. All angles are congruent? No. Exactly one pair of opposite angles are congruent? That's exactly one, so that's no. Diagonals are perpendicular? No, not necessarily. Diagonals are congruent to one another? No, one's going to be longer than the other. Diagonals bisect each other? Do they cut each other in half? Yes. And consecutive angles are supplementary? Yes, they are. All right, tell me the ones that work for rectangle. Top one, yes or no? Next one. Next. Next. Yes. Next? No, because two of them. Next? All angles are congruent. Next after that. Diagonals are perpendicular? No. Diagonals are congruent? Yes. Bisect? Supplementary. Good. A rhombus. All sides are congruent? Next one. Next. Next. Exactly one pair of opposite sides are parallel? Nope. All angles are congruent? Nope. Exactly one pair of opposite angles are congruent? Which is the only one that has that? Right, so go ahead and mark that. Diagonals are perpendicular. Yes, on a rhombus they are. Good. How about diagonals bisect each other? Or no, I'm sorry, diagonals are congruent. No, diagonals bisect each other? Consecutive, supplementary? Yes. A square. So, first one. Congruent? Opposite sides would have to be congruent. Parallel? Opposite angles? One pair, exactly one pair. No. All angles are congruent? We know it's not that next one. Diagonals are perpendicular? Diagonals are congruent. Bisect. Supplementary. What are the only ones for the kite? Diagonals are perpendicular and yep. Good. Trapezoid. I think there's only two for a trapezoid. Am I correct? What are they? Oops, I marked the wrong one here, guys. What was the other one for a kite? Diagonals are perpendicular. That? Sorry. My fault. Okay, so a trapezoid, exactly one pair of opposite sides are parallel, and what's the only other one? Possibly, yes. This is the one we're going to mark. When we talk about that, though, when we talk about the consecutive angles, it's only these with these, though. So it's not the top two with the bottom two. So that one's kind of, but kind of not. Okay? Quadrilateral hierarchy. So first we have all quadrilaterals. And then on this side, we would have parallelograms. Would be a subgroup, right? But inside parallelograms would be rectangles. That's Inside rectangle would be a rhombus. And inside a rhombus would be a square, right? Then we also have trapezoids and kites, which are kind of their own thing. All right, next page. Give the most specific name based on the quadrilateral's marking. So try A, B, C, and D on your own. What'd you guys say for number 1? We can be more specific. It has to be an isosceles trapezoid. Who can tell me why it's an isosceles trapezoid? Yeah. Yep, so these two are congruent, therefore the two sides are going to be congruent, which makes that isosceles. B, what do we call that? Most specific name. Yep. Just a square. How about C? And D. I can't call it a rectangle. If we notice, those are arrows. Those are not little markings. Yeah, the only thing I can call this, guys, is a parallelogram. Because I don't know angle measures, I don't know side lengths, so I can't be any more specific than just naming it a parallelogram. Next, state whether there is enough information in the given diagram to classify it by its name. Could I say that this one is a rectangle? And why is that? This one I can. Why is that? Well, but this one's not showing me that these sides are equal. It's just showing me that they're parallel. So that would only tell me it's a parallelogram. Yes. Yes. So since this is equal to this, which is equal to this, it actually makes it a what? A square. And is a rectangle a type of square? Yes. Yes. So yes. Isn't a square a type of rectangle? What did I say? Sorry, my fault. Yes, other way around. My fault. Okay. The only reason I know that it's a square is because this is congruent to this, which is congruent to this. And the only figure that has all your diagonals that are congruent to one another is a square. And a rectangle is a type of square. That this is parallel to this and this is parallel to this. No. What? Yes, you're right. So go backwards. Can I prove that this is a square? Not necessarily. But I can prove that it's a rectangle by what you just said. Because the diagonals have to be congruent to one another. Yeah. Did that just confuse the heck out of you? Okay. So let me go backwards. I can prove that this is a rectangle because opposite sides are parallel. But more so, this piece is congruent to this piece, which is congruent to this piece. The only two figures that have diagonals that are congruent would be a rectangle and a square. Okay? And on a rectangle and square, they also bisect each other. So those are the only two figures that would have all four of these pieces congruent. Before, when I said that this has to be a square, it doesn't have to be a square because I don't know if these four side lengths are congruent to one another. Therefore, I could really only prove that it's a rectangle because I don't know that. Does that make any more sense or not? Okay. I think you guys are just telling me yes, but that's okay. Okay, next one, isosceles trapezoid. So it's showing me one set of parallel sides. It's showing me that this is congruent to this and this is congruent to this. So can I name it an isosceles trapezoid? Yes, by definition I can. Because I have this base angle congruent to this base angle, which makes this side congruent to this side. And we have one set of parallel lines. Next one, a rhombus. A rhombus. Can I say that that's a rhombus? So rhombus is all four sides are congruent, and my opposite sides are parallel. So do I know anything about parallel here? No. I do know that three sides are congruent. Does that mean that that fourth side has to be congruent? No. Maybe it's a trapezoid again. This side's a little bit longer, right? So can I name this a rhombus? No, not necessarily. This figure is only telling me that this side's congruent to this side. It's not telling me anything about this side with this side. It's not telling me anything about their angles. It's not telling me anything about being parallel or not parallel. Can I name this as a kite? No.
C.
Yes.
How could it not be a rhombus?
Let me draw you something. Essentially here, I've given you the same amount of information as that one, right? And this is a trapezoid. So just because they're making it kind of look like a rhombus does not mean that this one is exactly the same length, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and plot those points real quick for me. What does that look like? Okay. For us to be able to prove that it's a rectangle, we need opposite sides parallel and opposite sides congruent. So what are the things I'm going to have to find on this? Slope and distance. So let's split down the room so you're only doing part of it. Split this middle thing in half, this side of the room. I want you guys to find the distance of AB and the distance of DC and the slope of those two. I want that side of the room to find the distance of BC and AD and the slope of those two. Does that make sense, what I'm asking you to do? You're going to have to use distance formula, so you have to remember that guy. Okay, someone who found the distance of AB, what is it? Do you guys agree? 2 squared roots of 5. Okay, how about DC? Okay, so those are congruent. What's the slope of AB? And what's the slope of DC? So they are also parallel. Okay, BC, someone who found the length of BC, what'd you get? Okay. Square root of 5, is that right? Okay. AD, what'd you get? What's the slope? And the slope of this guy. So is it a rectangle? Because we have proven that the sides are all congruent and parallel. Any questions on that? Okay, homework. There is going to be a Schoology 8.6 in there here in a second, if it's not already there. Plus, tomorrow, AMI days, Thursday, Friday. Thursday's AMI day homework is the practice C for 8.5. Friday's AMI day is the practice C for 8.6. Okay?